Mondale Robinson, thank you so much for joining us here on the Switch Up today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's good to be with you.
It's almost election day. Talk to me a little bit just about how you're feeling in this moment.
I think uh, there are a lot of times where, people are using words in hyperbolic moments and characteristics, but honestly, I'm a little uneasy, and I'm uneasy because we're witnessing an election cycle like we've never seen. A candidate switch at the last minute. Then that candidate raised north of $1 billion in less than 3 months, or right around 3 months, and then traditional tactics still being deployed in a way that does nothing to increase the number of Black men participating, meaning majority of this money is being spent with the same consultants who have failed epically at reaching Black men, and most of it being spent on TV ads, a place that is the least effective way to engage, especially when you're trying to expand your base and bring in people who don't trust politicians. So nervous is the best way to say it.
Yeah, and what's really interesting to me is how everybody has been saying how crucial this election is, that this could literally be a life or death election. Some people have been saying, but we're hearing from both campaigns about how they want to be engaging with Black men this election cycle. Are either campaign really reaching Black men where they are? Again, thinking about how close we are at this point to election day.
Yeah, I think honestly, both campaigns are doing a horrible job at reaching Black men. The efforts have been haphazard at best, and honestly racist. If we're being honest, let's be clear. There is a distinct difference between the two party systems in this country. One of the parties it's flat out racist. We say Black Lives Matter, they say Blue Lives Matter. Then, as soon as the election is lost by that party, talking about the Republican parties, they want to disband the FBI and also all systems that make America America, to the point where their candidate was saying that he want to be a dictator on day one, and they were chanting about it. So yeah, we know one party is extremely racist and had never done a great job at reaching Black people. And actually, the party as we know it today has its root in trying to recruit white people using their hate for Black people, talking about the Southern strategy and how it was deployed, not just with Richard Nixon, but Ronald Reagan and a lot of candidates since then. And definitely it's being used and deployed by, or employed by Donald Trump for sure. And then the other party is just doing what Democrats always do, which is basically take Black men for granted and then think they can get famous faces like Magic Johnson or other people to reach brothers. And these brothers, what it shows is a racist understanding of Black men, meaning you think you can entertain the Black man out with rappers or ball players, and not understand that these people are closer to the existence of white people than they are to the average Black man, meaning they're so comfortable with all the money that, i.e., Magic Johnson has, that he's not living the life of a normal Black man. He does not look like the 60% or so of Black men who are already registered in this country, but are what the world calls sporadic voters. His lived experience is nothing similar to them, but for his Black skin. And I think, the discounting of what Black men are saying by not choosing to vote at all, which is a protest vote, if you ask me, it's also a testament to where Black men find themselves. If we look at where Black men were 40 years after the 15th Amendment passed, which would put us around 1910 or so, only about 20% of Black men were participating in the electoral process. Now, we won't say that's because Black men were apathetic during those times. We would say that there were systems in place to keep Black men out of the voting booth. Those systems were the literacy test, the poll test, and also the threat of death from the Klan and other white nationalists. I argue that Black men right now are still faced through those same three barriers, and those are the major barriers that keep Black men from the poll. With the literacy test, we know that they underfund public schools, especially with the where Black students are. We also know that they're banning books. We also know that they are uh, putting Black boys in special need classes over suspending and expelling Black boys. So that in itself is a literacy test as it pertains to, if you look at the lived experience of those boys who are suspended and expelled, that's the school to prison pipeline played out. And voting is not something that these people do on a regular basis, talking about Black men that find themselves in that position. Then the same thing can be applied when we talk about the poll tax. Sure, that they don't make you pay to vote, but it costs 8 hours of your day if you live in a majority black district in some places in the South to vote. And black men that are living off a minimum wage or unemployed altogether are still not just an election cycle when you need the vote of black men, then how can you expect black men to participate in your elections when they see themselves in space that is matched to people who are in the undeveloped or underdeveloped world, not like a first world nation?
One thing I am very curious about, particularly again, thinking about former President Trump and Vice President Harris have both tried to indicate in some manner that they want to court black male voters very different ways. Obviously, we saw former President Trump say, I went to places that had black men, or and I was trying to create a sneaker. And Kamala Harris, we hear the vice president saying she's not taking votes for granted. I don't know if we've heard so much about what her strategy is to speak to black men, but what I guess are the top issues for black men this election cycle. I think that's sort of the easiest place to start, right? Is like what are those issues, and then let's speak to those issues.
Well, I think, unfortunately for politicians like Kamala Harris, the vice president, and the Democratic candidate for president, it is not that easy, right? You could be right on the issues, but if you're not a trusted messenger, it's not going to work with this demographic because this demographic have seen them be victims of politicians and the political system in a way that no other demographic in America can explain, right? We know about how much, like I just said, black men are killed by cops and those actors. We know that black men have the shortest lives of anybody. We have the worst healthcare outcome. We're the only demographic in this country that can be born rich and still are likely to, or middle class and still are likely to experience poverty in our lives. That is not excluding anybody, including black women, right? That's a demographic factor that is only about being black man in this country. So I think, being right on the issues is one thing that you have to do, but that's not enough. You have to be a trusted messenger. And it is impossible for a politician who is introducing themselves for the first time to this demographically across the country to be seen as a trusted messenger. So the right thing to do would be to ensure that organizations that these black men do trust have all the resources they need to do exactly what needs to be done to reach them and get them out to vote. And that's where I think the deficit is with the Democrats. They're not funding these fundings, all of these funds they're raising in this moment are going to the same consultant class, the same posters, and also to its own auxiliaries and campaigns. And I don't think that's a successful tactic that we can look back historically at voting data and say this has worked ever with black men. Like I said, of the 9.6 million black men that are registered to vote in this country, more than 52% of them have not voted in the last 4 federal elections. And that's a critique not of black men, but of the factors and these people who call themselves political pundits and consultants.
We have heard across the board that the economy is a major concern for voters, just all voters, demographics aside. I feel like when politicians try to speak on what is the top issues for black men, we often hear like criminal justice and reforming the criminal justice system. Curious if that is just not a myth maybe, but like do we overemphasize the idea of the criminal justice system to black men and sort of ignore other issues that are of concern to them?
Again, I would say that, the issues are very nuanced, and talking about the economy is absolutely an issue for black men. But the way we talk about it is not advantageous, right? We're talking about black men, the economy to black men about owning their own business. Most brothers are not in a position to own a business. This middle class argument that the world keeps having in our politics is excluding to so many black men because majority of black men in this country are not members of the middle class. They are just poor. And nobody's having a conversation about economics for poor people, especially poor black men. The criminal justice system is absolutely important to black men. But I think the way that it's being overemphasized in this election and every election goes back to the fact that people don't really have intimate relationships with black men who are living day-to-day lives with their backs against the razor edge of the wall. Brothers absolutely care about that. But what we're seeing and hearing from these consultant class is basically racist. And what I mean by that is it's them buying into this idea of criminality and associating it with black men. And I don't think we talk about it in that context. And because we don't, we fail epically at reaching brothers.
One thing I feel like we have been hearing about this ticket change, which happened like 100 days out from the election. It's still absolutely wild to think that major change happened, and we have seen the vice president, as you mentioned, she's got upwards of $1 billion raised, which seems unfathomable in a lot of ways. But there's this talk about this excitement around her campaign, this excitement that it's finally something different. We don't have an old white guy running, frankly. Is that something that is resonating with Black men this year? Do you feel that the vice president's identity as a Black woman, does that mean anything, that representation?
Listen, I'm as a political junkie, I'm absolutely excited about the fact that the Democratic Party finally got something right. That's me as a political junkie. I would argue that I find myself in the minority of minorities when I think about black men who are political junkies who are excited about this. Even on the Win with Black Men call, we saw 40, 50,000 black men on the first call. I participated in that call. One, because I support and believe in this candidate and think that she is probably one of the most qualified candidates ever run for the office. But it's also an acknowledgement that, while we are ready to share or spread this excitement and say it's every black man, it's not reaching the masses. It is not an excitement that is shared by brothers who are trying to figure out how they're going to pay their light bill tomorrow, or their kids going to eat. They're going to have another day of cereal for 3 meals. You know what I'm saying? So I think this it's a both and. Yes, there's a new excitement about the fact that you don't have to choose between two old white men or two white men at all. But then there's also the reality that what's it mean for me as I am trying to navigate the horror of what it means to be black man in America. And I think that conversation is not being had. And I think people take offense to it. People progressive folk, progressive minded folk take offense when you try to have this conversation in this moment, because this election is so important. But it's also important to acknowledge that black men lived experience must be raised up if we are to hear and see them in the election. And that's not a vain idea. That is a necessity for life, to be seen and heard, especially your plight when you are so low on the social markers as black men are.
I want to talk quickly, or maybe not quickly. We have heard that there is appearing to be a generation gap between young Black men and older Black men, where younger Black men seem more inclined to want to vote for, or indicating that they're going to vote for, the former president, whereas those who are the older Black men are saying that they are leaning more toward voting for the vice president. Is that something that you're hearing or seeing in your conversations? And what do you think could be a driving factor behind that generation gap?
Yeah, I think this goes back to pundits talking about Donald Trump talking points. Donald Trump said he's gonna get 25% of black men vote, and then the world started talking like it was a real possibility, right? Like Donald Trump since Donald Trump came on the scene, black men have become more progressive. In 2020, he got less of the black men vote than he did in 2016. In 2022, we saw black men show up for progressive ideas and candidates in a way that they had never before. In 2023, even when it wasn't a national election, we saw black men in Ohio outperform every demographic for women's right to choose, including black women. 8% higher. Black men voted 88% for women's right to choose. Black women was the closest demographic at 80%. No national media or anybody ran with that story or told that story, because the myth of this black man seepage towards Republican or becoming more conservative is something that I think people wanted to be the narrative. But in actuality, we don't have voting data to support that. Talking to me about polls mean nothing, because in 2020, they said the same thing. Donald Trump was going to get 20% of the black men vote. And what happened? We were screaming. Black Male Voter Project was screaming the entire year. This is fanciful at best. And then disrespectful to black men at worst. And I think we're in the same space right now as it pertains to if older men or younger black men are becoming more conservative, even though our actions and our voting history show something completely different. people don't want to have a real grown-up conversation about our politics, and they want to just point to people like rappers who don't represent black men. Ice Cube, Lil Wayne, who on record saying America's not racist because he was a young rich N-word, saying that Black Lives Matter as an organization didn't matter when we seen those sisters, those three sisters who started it or give so much to the fight. I think when we put it in that context, when we see Ice Cube riding around with Tucker Carlson through the hood talking about police officers aren't bad, they just want to get back home. We see a lived experience that is different than what your art showed us and also what we experience as regular black men in this country. So I don't believe, and I'm not bothered by the 8 to 12% of black men that will vote Republican, because since the shift in party policy, we've always seen that demographic, and it's a small fraction of what we need to do, because there's so many brothers out there that would vote for progressive ideas and candidates if we were able to convince them to get off the couch and go vote. The problem, though, is, like, again, because there's a lack of trust in the political infrastructure and candidates to do what they say they're going to do on behalf of black men, we see brothers really choosing between the couch or the candidate, not between Republicans and Democrats.
Do Black men feel that their vote has power, I guess, at this point, when thinking about how you're saying, like, we're not really seeing the candidates speak to Black men in a way that resonates with them. They're not using, as you mentioned, these trusted sources. I mean, do Black men feel like their voice, their vote has power?
I think the black men that will vote this election cycle are the only ones that feel that vote has power. This is what we've learned at Black Male Voter Project, not using in our program political strategies, but psychology, the lessons learned from Maslow hierarchy needs about people and their basic needs. If you don't have your basic needs met, then you can't think about things that are self-actualization. And then also some of the science, the psychological science associated with epigenetic trauma. We saw the studies from about our Jewish brothers and sisters that are descendants of folk who survived the Holocaust and how they have PTSD. So we posit at Black Men Voter Project that if people that went through the Holocaust and their descendants have PTSD, what is the PTSD and what is the effect of that PTSD for Black men who are survivors and descendants of people that were around when the 15th Amendment was passed and watched Black men be lynched and killed for trying to exercise their franchise. So there's that, and then there's also the fact that I think we have to be honest about what it means, and I continue to say this, what it means to be Black man in America. And I think there's a serious drought of Black men in the political space that are speaking on behalf of Black men, and instead they're speaking on behalf of their proximity to whiteness and how they're trying to secure that.
I feel like it's been an interesting year just all around in terms of politics, in terms of, again, we went from just set ticket to a change ticket. We're in a hurricane season now. I know that there's a lot of concerns over access to the ballot box at this point with the devastation that we're seeing. I mean, what are your concerns going into November, as voting has already started in some places? I mean, do you have any concerns around Black male voters, not just if they're going to show up, but will they have access to show up if they wanted to?
Yeah, I think, like, listen, election administration is always a concern for us at Black Male Voter Project, not just when it's a pending hurricane or people are suffering from a natural disaster, but just because it is always harder for Black men to have access to the ballot than most folk, right? With the economic reasons, the threat of police and all of that stuff. But we also have other issues that keep brothers from the polls. So when I see and hear about the weather in the way that we do in this country being as immature as it is with our planning for elections, I'm very nervous about what this hurricane season means for Black men in spaces like Florida in the I-4 corridor, or which is a very Black and brown space. So and Florida, a lot of the elections are always determined somewhere around 60 to 77,000 votes, and that can be picked up or lost right there in the I-4 corridor. And those are some very Black counties in that space too. So very, very very concerning about that. And I also, like I said, the lack of planning from those who should have a plan, because hurricane season is not new in this country. And we know election season is in the dead center of it, especially as global warming continues to wreak havoc on this planet. So I'm extremely concerned about that as the founder of Black Man Voter Project, but also as a person who is concerned with the lack of strategy and forward thinking from this country and those in charge of our elections.
When I think about some of the idea of a trusted messenger, as you were speaking, and of course, as you mentioned, there are some rappers that we have seen, some music moguls who have been trying to get involved. But I think about at this moment in time how we have seen somebody like Senator Tim Scott, Representative Byron Donald, Congressman Wesley Hunt, I think at one point was on the campaign trail as well. I mean, do these very few black male Republicans hold any sway over black male voters? Because I think then on the flip side to that, you see Congressman Stephen Horsford, chairman of the Congressional Black Caucus, who says any black man would vote for Kamala Harris over Donald Trump. I mean, are these warring voices, or is it just a representation of where how black men are not a monolith, or is there any sway to what these political leaders have to say more so than these other voices that we're hearing from the music world?
Yeah, I think, listen, what the beautiful part about being Black man and in this role at Black Man Voter Project is I'm reminded every day of how disconnected our politics is from the real world. Uh, Tim Scott represents a bunch of white people who voted for him. If you look at the black men in his district or in his state, some of South Carolina has some of the lowest performing uh, voting habits of black men, right? Majority of black men in his state had never voted for him. So how is he a surrogate for the campaign on behalf of black men, or to recruit black men when he can't even recruit the black men in his home state to participate for him? The flip side, and then we don't even need to talk about Hunt and Byron Donaldson, who represents majority white districts who black men don't see anything in. I mean, brothers who are willing to lie to appease their white wives at the expense of black suffering. It was Byron Donaldson out of his own mouth who said black people were better off doing segregation, right? Tell my father that, who suffered a felony for defending his mom on a sharecropping farm when a white boy smacked my grandmother. Tell her that they were better off during those times. Tell all the black people who were lynched for standing on the wrong side of the sidewalk. I think it's very rich for that asshole to say that. I think Wesley Hunt has shown his colors a long time ago as well. So I don't concern myself with them. And I would say this: black men are not a monolith as it pertains to our lived experience, but the way we vote is monolithic. And I think people take that as an insult, but actually that is a testament to who black men are. It shows that regardless of where you find yourself in geography or financially, you still see community as something that you need to be voting for. And no other demographic other than black women can say that in the way that black men do. So we vote with black women more than any other men in this country vote with their women. We also vote with black men together more than any other men in this country. And that is a testament to what it means to be black in America. And I think anybody finding that monolithic thought or pattern to be problematic does not give a damn about community like we do.
Do you see, or I guess I should say, what do you think the candidates have to do? And I'm not even just talking about the presidential candidates at this point, because of course it's also a midterm year. And I know that that's something, unfortunately, when it's presidential year, everybody's talking about the presidential candidates, but it's midterm year too, in some places, governors elections as well. Um, what do candidates have to do at this moment in time to speak to black men and say, I deserve your vote. I'm going to do what it is that you've been asking to. Is there anything, I guess, that they can do themselves outside of those messengers that you talked about?
Yeah, I mean, listen, candidates got to do what candidates got to do, but here's the problem. It doesn't matter what they do in this moment, it's going to come off as transactional. So the best thing they can do is any resource they have left over for this next 27 or 6 days that we have left is to send all the money they can to trusted messenger organizations that are in the community year round reaching out to black men, because anything else just sounds like political speak a few days before the election. And you showing up with a proverbial fried chicken or church fan ain't gonna make a big difference to brothers.
Is there a difference in Black male voter turnout for federal elections versus local elections? Do we have data on that?
We do have that on that, and I mean, there's a serious drop off on local elections in every space for the most part. But I think
And
that
I
too.
think that also is like that's not even just something that's concentrated only with Black men. That's I think nationwide with voters.
Yeah, I mean, we see that. You can see it even when it's even if it's a federal election, like in the congressional election, you see the drop off in midterm elections versus presidential elections. And then even when the further people go down the ballot, there's always a drop off from the top of the ticket to the bottom of the ticket. I think that goes back to how our politics are ran. It's ran where we spend billions and billions of dollars on presidential elections when we don't spend that much money on local elections, even though the decision of local electeds, and I'm speaking as a mayor of a small town in North Carolina, majority Black town in a majority Black county. We see a lot less resources spent, even though those decisions impact people's lives immediately versus what happens at the federal level.
Looking at a broader picture, I'm curious. We know a majority of Black voters lean Democratic. I think it's 83%, something around there was latest numbers from Pew Research. Do we know for Black men, do they lean more toward Democrats than Republicans, or is that a little bit less? Is that a little bit more murky? Because I think once you start to break down actually numbers, clearly things aren't just black and white for folks.
Yeah, I think, listen, if you ask your brother if you ask the majority of Black men, especially those who are not super voters, and by super voters, I mean people who vote in every election, you're gonna get a similar response. Most brothers are not gonna say they're Democrat or Republican, but our voting, listening to what people say versus how people show up is a failed tactic, and it's the problem, my problem with polls, right? We don't need to look at polls when we have so much historical data as it pertains to voting. And if you look at voting, then it's more than 80% of Black people that show up or say that they are Democrat with their vote election cycle after election cycle. Again, Joe Biden was at the 90 percentile. Barack Obama was more than that, right? So I think when you look at who is Democrat, overwhelmingly we're talking 80 something to 90% of Black people vote democratically. And that is a testament not to what people say, but how they vote. And that's what we really should be measuring, not polls.
I'm curious just for you as we keep all of this in mind and putting, whoever folks want to vote for aside. I mean, how important is it to you for you to feel how important is it for Black men to vote? How important, I mean, and I ask that because I feel like oftentimes we hear people say, well, it's your duty, or excuse me, people died for the right to vote, all of these things. I mean, is that something that you feel is something that needs to be discussed? Is it important for Black men to vote?
No, I think actually that conversation is a conversation that actually has lost its legs. This idea that there's blood shared for shared for your right to vote, which is a true statement, but it does not ring true to a demographic who has survived so much, right? And what I mean by that is we talk about Black men in two types. We talk about the Martin Luther King, Malcolm X era as if that is the archetype of what Black men is. But what people forget is those who generally were members of baby boomer generations or generations even older, right? Depending on where you look at the cutoff at. And baby boomers were a generation that was large as hell for sure, but it was mostly white, almost 90% white, which means Black people were way less than 10% of that generation. Right now, we have millennials, which is larger than baby boomers, and Zers, which are larger than baby boomers and millennials. And both of those generations are 42% something other than white. So we have more Black men on the planet right now than we ever had. And we keep rejecting their notion of Blackness for something that we want to go back to that will never be. 90% of Black men right now don't go to church at all. 90%. And I think that's even the generation that I belong to, which is Xers. And I think people continue to try to force old institutions, Black institutions that used to motivate Black men in a way that will never work again. That is not a shot over the bow at legacy organizations like NAACP or the National Urban League. It's not even a shot over the bow at fraternities and college educated Black men or like 100 Black men. It is to say though that those organizations historically have not reached Black men. Majority of Black men, 60% of Black men are what we call chronically sporadic or low information voters, right? They don't turn out in 3 out of the last 4 federal elections. And to say that those brothers don't deserve to be heard or listen to their screaming is to discount what it means to be Black for them. So I say, I think, I'm super excited about the fact that Black men have fooled the world over and over, time and time again. And when people say we won't support Black women, nobody in this country support Black women more than Black men, right? When I'm asked, what does it mean to have Black men vote? It means a hell of a lot to me to have Black men vote, but it absolutely means more to have Black men seen and for their issues to be voting on. And I don't think when people get elected, they're voting on Black men issues. We just get pushed to the backside until to the next election cycle.
Yeah, and if you don't mind, I would love to delve a little bit deeper into that. And I know we're starting to run out of time here, but this narrative that somehow Black men wouldn't support Kamala Harris or that they wouldn't support a Black woman. Is there any truth at all into that statement, or is that just a statement that's just designed to divide?
I mean, it's designed to divide, but it also goes back to the idea that people don't know Black men. I think, to say that we don't have to say that is to say that Black men don't support their daughters, their sisters, their mothers, their aunts, their grandmothers, and their friends, right? And their partners as well. So I think it's an absolutely disgusting and also a narrow a mirror into our politics and how little they know about what it means to be a normal Black man. I mean, when you look at the athlete, majority of those that are super wealthy, they are out in marriages outside of the Black culture, meaning they're in mixed marriages. That is not to say that you don't love Black people or Black women because you marry outside our race, but it is to say that you're living an existence that is not similar. I would argue that brothers who are struggling to make ends meet, majority of them are married to Black women and are in close community with Black people, all Black people. And it doesn't, then again, go back to our voting history. There's no election you can show me where anybody outside of Black women supported Black women more than Black men. Not white women, not Latinx women, not Asian women, no one. Not, and definitely not the men of those races support Black women more than Black men. So I find that argument dumb, ill-fated, in that it will have a negative effect on how Black men turn out. But then also it shows, again, it highlights for me in blaring color that people don't know Black men the way that we do with the data that we have at Black Male Voter Project. And it's a disgrace that these people are being paid hundreds of million, tens of million, and in some cases, tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands when you look at the pundits on TV to say shit. Oh, sorry, excuse my language, to say stuff that is not really grounded in facts.
So I guess then my final question for you, I saw a headline the other day that said Black men will decide this year's election. Do you think that's what will happen? It will come down to Black male voters this year to decide who will be the next president of the United States.
Yeah, listen, there's about 152 counties in what the world calls battleground states. So we're talking Wisconsin, Michigan, um, Michigan, North Carolina, Georgia, and also Pennsylvania that have more than have 2,000 or more Black men registered to vote. And I would argue the turnout in those counties will determine what, with Black men, will determine what will be the outcome of this election. So I think absolutely there's some truth in that. But what I will say is the blame will not be on Black men, regardless of how they turn out. The blame will be out on these failed tactics and how sorry we are at reaching these demographics and letting them know that there is power in their vote in determining who will speak for them or not speak for them at all.
Mondale Robinson, founder of the Black Male Voter Project. Thank you so much for joining us on the Switch Up. I know this was your Switch Up debut, but I do want to give a shout out because you always take my calls no matter what it is that I'm covering. And so I'm always so grateful to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much and be great.
Thank you. I'm sure we will be talking again soon. As you mentioned, there is still 20 some days before this election is over. And God knows I will be taking a nap the day after election day.
Won't we all, hopefully, right?
Hopefully. But thank you so much. We'll talk soon.
All right, peace.
Take care. Bye.